And I haven't introduced you yet, which I'm about to do. But Meredith, tell people where you are in the world.
Yes, hi. I'm Meredith, and I am located in California, Northern California, Silicon Valley area.
Yeah. Um, is that where you were when you came to Stoicism?
It is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've lived between San Francisco and San Jose for quite a while, and I discovered Stoicism back in 2015, 2016, and made it my focus, started to blog about it, write about it, read about it. So
Yeah.
really glad to be here today.
Now, I don't think this is part of your presentations because I'm not trying to steal slides off of your slides. But when you first came to it, was there something in your head that you were trying to work on? Something that you said, you know what, maybe this is a thing that can help me?
Definitely. I came to it because I was a parent of two young children and I was just trying to find my way. And of course, there's a lot of parenting advice out there. But that's not really what I was looking for. I was looking for how I could cope with the challenges of being responsible for two young lives and rise to that occasion with kind of a new sense of strength and courage, but also kind of be a philosophical parent, someone who could see the bigger picture and could use reason and kind of go back to according to nature, how I wanted to be a mother for my two daughters. So, in today's chaotic and competitive world, I just found it to be an incredibly powerful philosophy, and it's inspired me ever since.
Yeah. As someone who's kind of done the same thing, the same path, teenage kids trying to help them in their way through the world, it has helped me, I think, maintain my equanimity in times I might not have otherwise, and hopefully deal with them with a little bit, at least virtue forward, ethics forward, right? Trying to be a good human being. I'm not sure they're bought into the idea. I don't think they don't look at themselves and think, I want to be a stoic when I grow up. But I think they also hopefully get some good reflection back from me. It's like, I've been working at this, trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think just being a role model for some of these things and also showing that, it's not always easy. It's sometimes a struggle to adopt these ideas and it can be aspirational, but they have kind of internalized a lot of that. So now I turn to my teen daughters for their emotional intelligence as well. They now can give me advice.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Excellent. Meredith, is it okay if I introduce you and then we'll just kind of get this thing on the road and you can
Absolutely.
share your slides here when I get this done? So I prepared a short bio and I apologize. I should have run this by you. If I say anything that's untrue or otherwise, you just fix it and you were part of it. How about that?
Sounds good.
But I did this with positive intent. Let's put it that way, and we'll
Thank
figure it
you.
out. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to introduce Meredith Kunz. Meredith Alexander Kunz is a writer, editor, and communication strategist based in Silicon Valley who has become known for her work exploring Stoic philosophy in the context of modern parenting and everyday life. She is the author of the Stoic Mom blog, which examines how Stoic thought can be applied to improve parenting and personal development. She maintains a blog and newsletter on Substack called The Stoic Mom, where she regularly shares insights on Stoic philosophy, parenting, and modern life challenges. She has also contributed to publications like Modern Stoicism, that's us, where she has written about topics such as Stoic parenting in the age of distraction. In her professional life, she specializes in creating accessible, meaningful stories about complex ideas, particularly in the realms of science and technology. She combines this expertise with her interest in Stoicism to communicate philosophical concepts in a relatable and practical manner. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Meredith Alexander Kunz. Put your hands together, folks, and it sounds like this. It's all you, friend.
Thank you so much, Phil. That was a really lovely introduction. I really appreciate that. All very accurate. So thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm really happy to share with you, to talk with you, and to learn from you. And I will begin to share my slides right now. So let me go ahead. Can you see my full screen of slides?
Yes.
Excellent. Very good. So my talk today is actually, this talk will not focus on my parenting interests. This will focus on another interest of mine that I think can apply to so many of our lives, which is about how to be a Stoic at work. And it's really going to focus on how we use the virtues in this context. As Phil mentioned, I am a communications professional. I've worked in this field for many years. I currently work in the tech industry. And I've also worked as a volunteer. I was a long time Girl Scout leader, for example, and done other kind of jobs in my life as well. And I think in all of these roles, there is a way that we can bring our Stoic life philosophy to the forefront to really help us become more effective, more authentic, more ethical as people and as leaders, really at all levels. So this is what I'm going to share about today. And here's some ways to find me online. So I think we all know that there's a Stoic myth out there. I just wanted to start with this as sort of a grounding of, when a lot of people think about Stoicism, first of all, there's the small s Stoicism. That's the one that's about the stiff upper lip, the no emotions, the pure rationality, and mastering kind of your world that way without expressing anything. And we here today all know that that's not really what Stoicism with a big S is. But there's also a kind of set of myths about Stoicism with a big S out there. Phil mentioned some of those interesting Facebook groups that exist. When you go online, a lot of what you can find might be called in the category Broicism, kind of ideas that Stoicism will make you this warrior and it will kind of harden you towards others, or that you can be this lone wolf living inside your inner citadel, kind of isolated from society, strong and fierce. But let's go back to ancient sources about what Stoicism actually is. So the Stoic reality, and I'll just give a couple quotes here. Um, the good man will not live in solitude, for he is suited by nature for society and for action. There is actually kind of a duty to work in society and with others in the ancient sources. And of course, the background of this is we've actually lost the ancient Greek sources of Stoicism. So we're trying to reconstruct them. And one place is some of them are reconstructed as Diogenes Laertius, where he's citing Zeno and the early Stoics in this particular quote. Oh, oops, sorry about that. Let's see if I can go forward again. And collaboration is viewed as natural and positive and needed in our ancient sources. Marcus Aurelius, I really love this quote. We have come into being to work together like feet, hands, eyelids, or the two rows of teeth in our upper and lower jaws. To work against one another is therefore contrary to nature. And we know the goal of Stoicism, as kind of the ancients had defined it, was to live according to nature. So what is nature? Rational and sociable for humans. And that's really the same thing that is kind of the source of the virtues in a way. It's human nature in the ancient sources. And virtues are acted out in the real world. And that's why it means work for us today and for everyone who's ever worked as a paid staffer, a volunteer, or as a parent, which is also work. And it kind of originated with Socrates, the foundation of this. You can find it in Plato's Republic. The four primary virtues are outlined as wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation or temperance. And they're also explored by Stoic writers and teachers and by Cicero, who wasn't strictly a Stoic himself. But if you look at On Duties and On Ends, you'll see an interesting source on Stoic ethics and on Stoic virtues. Sure. Okay. And what about the Stoic virtues and Stoic moral theory? So again, we're trying to reconstruct some of this. Chrysippus said the virtues express expertise or knowledge about how to live, and seem to think that the virtues can be taught and moral progress can be made. Sometimes you'll hear that in Stoicism, there's a very strict distinction between virtue and vice. But there was also this idea that we could make progress, we could do better as we go. So I like this quote from Liz Gloyn of University of London, Royal Holloway, where she wrote that Stoics believed you could develop virtue by acting in the appropriate manner externally, so that you would encourage an appropriate internal disposition to help you act correctly in the future. So I find that to be inspiring about how to use virtue today. So, just a few more words about the Stoic virtues in action before we get to the main topic about our work lives. Um, in Stoicism, acting with virtue is really the only good. And the virtues were considered interrelated and parts of a whole. I myself am still learning about how these virtues played out in our ancient sources. And I find it quite interesting. So these are some examples that I came up with about, if you act with virtue, you're demonstrating fairness, even when it's tempting to take more for yourself. If you're being brave, you're in a difficult situation, you're still working and trying to create change. If you're being moderate, you're kind of being reasonable, and when others are angry and irate and yelling, you're not, and you're using your energy to be moderate. And wisdom, helps you discern good from bad, truth from lie, which is a very important skill. So it's all non-virtuous actions would be considered bad in this moral theory. And of course, we know there are a lot of indifference in Stoicism, outward things most people are really focused on and striving for: money, reputation, wealth, beauty, promotion, possession, foods, etc. But yes, it would be nice to have those. Stoicism doesn't say you can't have those, but really the value of those would be if you use them with a sense of virtue in how you interact with the world, if you do have those. And those are not the necessary things for good. So my main topic is about Stoic virtues at work, and we know we spend a ton of time working. Some estimates say it's about a third of our lives, or 90,000 hours of our lives potentially for the average person. And what I find interesting is also everyone who works or does any type of anything out there in the world is really trying to grow. So for me, the Stoic virtues serve as goalposts for that growth and the leadership that we can bring, whether or not people manage other people or how they interact with others. People can develop the virtues on the job, and through practicing them, become more self-aware, effective, and ethical as people, as leaders, as workers. And so it's yet another kind of field in the world where we can practice our virtues and improve and build our character. I've been working on this through leadership coaching with business clients. I am actually in the process of becoming a certified professional coach as one of the things I do, because I think this is so powerful. So I'll go through each of the four primary virtues to give you a sense of, first, kind of some ways I think it plays out at work, and then some examples. So wisdom. Um, with wisdom, I think it's about using reason and our sense of discernment, kind of, as I said, from good from bad, true from lie, to gain knowledge about the landscape at work. Excuse me. Wisdom can help us uncover what we really want and set goals to reach it and figure out what's beneath the story. And by story, I mean kind of all these narratives that we have about who we are, what we're doing, the people around us, the circumstances we're in. And I think a lot of Stoicism is actually about that, is kind of digging down to the deeper truth and the real good. And we can understand that we're constantly making judgments. And so working on making better ones, kind of using the virtues in our work lives. So here's an example. There's so many examples, but I'm just kind of focusing on one. And this is about a person, employee, who's an individual contributor. So they don't have people they're managing, but that person's trying to find out, trying to discern from within her, does she want to try for a promotion? Which seems like it could be hard, but then again, promising, or move into a completely different field. And, she has a lot of kind of cognitive dissonance about, maybe the work circumstances is stressful, uncertainty about the management, don't really know about if the colleagues are going to kind of support this promotion either. But then moving to another field, takes a lot of exploration work and there's risks. So I think, like, for example, from kind of our Stoic thinking, as well as the thinking in coaching and kind of leadership and executive development coaching, there's the view from above and kind of the meta view of the bigger picture. When you're trying to find, like, what is that positive goal that you want to go towards, you can use your wisdom about yourself and about the world, and you can self-coach through any type of method like journaling, meditation, discussion. You can also be coached by somebody else to kind of discover, what is that goal? What do you really want and why? And are the reasons that you want it ones that are actually going to help bring you more fulfillment and more ability to use your virtues on the job ultimately? The second one is justice. And with justice, I think we can work towards a culture of fairness and inclusion and cope with so-called imposter syndrome. This is, all over the internet of everyone expresses how they feel. Imposter syndrome. And it really is one of these limiting beliefs that, it's trying to, us telling ourselves who should be able to speak, who should be valued, who should be listened to and promoted or kind of valued in the workplace. But justice would say, we're going to value each person's contribution for what it's worth and build a career path focused on the person's impact, the impact of their work rather than their status, their background, their title, or any of those other indifference. So, an example I've seen of how this can play out is someone who's between jobs. And he's kind of finding it difficult to justify exploring new careers, asking these questions like, why would anyone listen to me? Why would someone value me or hire me in this new field? It's very limiting, and it's kind of about who should have a voice there and who should really be heard and recognized. And so it's kind of, and well, one thing you'll see is that all the virtues are kind of interrelated. As I mentioned in one of my slides, they're all interrelated because you can also see these same things in the light of, say, courage, for example, and wisdom. So I'm just kind of slicing and dicing it here, but I think these examples actually sort of prove that all the virtues are interrelated, which was also a Stoic moral theory, ethical theory. So questions that I've asked someone who's in that situation, I think we can ask ourselves, what if you gave yourself permission to be going into this new field? How can you bring your own sense of value and kind of experience, hopefully, other people responding to that? What's the evidence that people wouldn't listen? So maybe that's also kind of going back to cognitive behavioral therapy, kind of what's the evidence for that belief that you have? And we know that that's related to Stoic thinking as well. So the next virtue, courage. Going against conventions, conventional wisdom, whatever environment you're in, it takes courage. It's, difficult, but you could have the opportunity to ask hard questions, kind of push the boundaries of that environment in terms of what's expected, what you think is needed. Risk taking, I mean, it is difficult because the consequences are very real. I mean, you can lose your job, you can lose your work relationships. So there's going to be kind of a continuum of how you're going to use courage. And again, goes back to the virtues being interrelated. You kind of want to bring the correct sense of moderation probably to your courage because I've also heard folks say at work, courage at work is not just saying exactly what's on your mind, no matter how kind of damaging that is to your work relationship. So that's you can weigh that question as you think about what risks you want to take, and finding new ways to pursue what we want at work, but even potentially on a small scale, despite the barriers that we're encountering. So, an example of this that I think is interesting as a way to use courage to kind of break out of that feeling stuck um, or feeling burnout is individual contributor who feels frustrated and underused in her role, and maybe her role is limited in scope, but she has a fear of trying something new. So, kind of through conversations or through this exploration of courage, she discovers she wants to bring a different perspective, in this case, the artist mind, to work. And she kind of embodies the energy of that metaphor, even almost physically, like, how am I going to be the artist at work? And starts asking for new assignments and new learning opportunities and considers the direction of where she wants to go. And other metaphors I've seen people use have been really interesting. It should come from within you of what kind of inspires you maybe to find courage. Of course, the Stoics were very interested in role models, so you could have any role model. You could pick one of the Stoics. You could pick Marcus Aurelius as a role model for your courage on the job. But I've heard people pick really kind of intriguing ones like octopus, lion, a salsa dancer, a race car driver. So you could pick anything and try to embody that a bit as you fill through your courage at work. Um, there we go. So moderation is the fourth primary virtue in Stoicism, and it's about how we handle our emotions and our wishes, about self-management of how we feel, coping with other people's emotions and work styles, which can be very challenging. Our managers, executives we work with, colleagues, staff, volunteers we work with, and bringing those reasonable approaches to problem solving, keeping a sense of kind of order and boundaries at work. And when I say boundaries there, I mean around kind of the emotions of working with other people. An example of this is a manager who's in charge of a team, and one staff member has anger issues and is exploding at this manager and at the rest of her staff. And this has kind of been just going on for a while. So this manager, instead of responding with anger, she decides to use reason and kind of exercises moderation in this difficult situation, like being actually yelled at. So she's asking herself, what's reasonable here? How does this affect the work environment, both for me and for others? And what am I responsible for? So this manager did, decide to take some action. This had been kind of unreported for a while, and then she went ahead and took some action about it. Another area that I'm very interested in is working parents, parents who are also working outside the home. All parents are working, but some parents are also juggling jobs. In the case of the coachees I'm working with in corporate roles. So some examples are, parents trying to manage their work hours so that they can have days off and kind of at times that work for them. And I had a coachee who he was talking about he wanted to work more collaboratively with his colleagues to kind of manage who's taking off time when, instead of them telling him 1, 2 days before, oh, I'm going to be gone for the next week. Can you do all this work? Kind of dumping out on him when he also had, family obligations as well. And things he wanted to do with his kids. A parent who wants to communicate with her kids about work travel with not feeling as much guilt, and a parent who wanted to talk with their manager about work hours in the office versus remote and how that was affecting the family life. So those people are also needing to call upon the virtues and related behaviors, for example, wisdom and kind of honesty about what's really true in a situation and how to communicate it, courage to speak up to others and to managers, collaborating when it's hard, bringing moderation and justice to that as the lens, and introducing our kids to how we make judgments about our roles and our duties and about our work. And in conclusion, I just wanted to say that I think aiming for the Stoic virtues at work is really valuable at all levels and helps us build our character. If we think of the obstacle as the way, that's such a more positive and hopefully encouraging way to think about the obstacles we face at work, and as a field for us to try out our virtues and improve on them. And you can use Stoicism as self-coaching to develop your leadership, to develop your personal work ethics, your ethical self at work, I should say. And of course, the circles of concern. This is a Stoic concept we've often spoken about. I think this is a way in which that happens too, kind of spreading from the individual to the individual, plus their coach or their manager, to their team and the people they work with, to their company, to the industry, maybe to the wider business and work culture. If we bring, I mean, if you can imagine a network effect, if everyone were to do this, it would be really, really an interesting thing, and so beneficial. But of course, it's an individual choice right now, and hopefully, we're people who are trying to role model this. And in the end, I just want to say thank you for joining. And I wanted to say that you can find me online You can look for the Stoic Mom Substack, also X and Instagram, but LinkedIn as well. And I will have a book coming up. It's Beyond Stoicism in the US, hopefully in January, with Massimo Pigliucci and Greg Lopez. And that's going to actually expand out into a range of 13 schools of Hellenistic philosophy. So hopefully you'll look for that. So thank you so much. I'll stop sharing.
Meredith, I think this is a sticky problem from so many ways. I mean, the whole thing of how can I act with virtue at work? Let me start with the hard question. You know, you came in and you're a coach here, you're helping people out with this stuff. Here's my problem. Stoicism doesn't tell me what to do. It tells me to act with wisdom. It tells me to act with courage and temperance and justice, but it does not tell me that I should not be eating free food out of the break room, right? It does not tell me exactly what that is. Wait, so people come to you and they're asking for advice. How do you help them figure that out?
I think the first step is getting a deeper understanding of what these virtues are and what they mean. So I shared a little bit about that earlier, and um, I find each one of them interesting, but they're also interrelated, like I said. So as soon as you start to talk about how am I going to be more wise, how am I going to be more just in this situation, you very quickly see the relationship between all of these four aspects of virtue. And I think that is interesting. Just simply asking ourselves the question, what would be a wise choice here? You know, how could I act with moderation in this case? Because you're right, it is about us and the decisions that we make. And then there's also what I like to call stop, drop, and question your impressions. I mean, immediately
Nice.
you have to look at your judgments. You know, how are you judging this? And is it really kind of fundamentally accurate to what's going on? Or is it part of those narratives and stories that are swirling around with the cognitive dissonance and the cognitive distortions? Can we get to kind of a little bit of a deeper truth through wisdom, through discernment of what's happening to see the bigger picture, kind of leveling up, view from above style. So it's a constant thing, and this is why it's kind of, I do think that obstacle is the way approach is really the best mindset on this is that we're constantly faced with decisions and judgments, and each time we have to kind of see, does this meet the level of our assent, or are we kind of not? And if we're not, then how do we handle it? How are we going to speak up? Are we going to use our courage to say, no, I don't think well, first of all, in our brain, and we're going to say, this is not, I don't think this is really accurate. But then next step is, if there's something that you do see that you think is not going in a virtuous direction, how will you kind of act on that? How can you create more virtue? And I think there are ways, and sometimes they're very small ways, even just speaking up in a meeting or asking someone for help, or kind of asking, what could you do in this situation that you haven't tried before?